Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I want to talk about some ominous signs of a collectibles bubble. Yeah, and I got 4 possible signs to get into here. And hopefully by the end of the video we'll come up with some conclusions and takeaways about if there is a collectibles bubble or not. But let's get into those 4 signs here. Alright, first sign is I'm seeing a lot of all-time high prices and sales covered by like mainstream media, when normally they wouldn't be covering these kind of collectible sales like ever. And for me, I don't think that's the best thing or the best sign for some of these collectibles markets. So what really made me think about this is I saw a Wayne Gretzky rookie card in the PSA 10 sell. So apparently there's only 4 of these Wayne Gretzky PSA 10 rookies out there. It ended up selling for like $1.something million. I forget the exact price, but I live in Canada. Hockey's kind of a big deal in Canada. And this one made the rounds. Yeah, it was on like local news, national news, and even like our Sports Center and Sportsnet here in Canada. Like it was just on everything. And there was even a Sportsnet show about how like hockey cards were coming back and stuff, and sport cards were getting really popular. So, you know, for me, someone who's read like some stock market books throughout their life and, you know, learned about bubbles and stuff like that, I don't think that's the best sign that some of these like mainstream media organizations are kind of talking about collectibles, because, you know, mainstream media, they're going to be super reactive. Like you're not going to get any kind of like insightful ideas or something like that about collectibles, about a big opportunity or something where you can get in on the bottom. They're just going to be like, wow, these collectible prices are crazy, like let's talk about it. And that's usually going to be near the end of the opportunity. So a couple other books here that I saw that kind of made me think of this too. Detective Comics number 27. It was CGC 7, I believe. It was a heritage auction one. This really made the rounds in the comic book community, but I saw it on like Google News and stuff, like on my phone and, you know, things like that. And, you know, normally you don't see prices or all-time high sales. You know, these are big books though, but it was like 1-point-something million. Another one, Star Wars 1 CGC 9.8, there was a heritage auction there that sold for $4,560. That really made the rounds in the comic book community. I don't know if I saw that on like a Google News or anything like that, but another thing too, in the comic book community right now, there's a lot of like all-time high sales prices going on right now for big key issues, and everyone's posting them on social media and some of the books they own, so they're kind of bragging. And that's great, like it's awesome, you know, you own a book that's gone up, fantastic, but that's probably not the best sign for that we're, you know, at the beginning of the opportunity. We're probably near the end more so, or at least due for, you know, a significant pullback, or maybe going sideways for a really long time kind of thing. So just to illustrate this point in a stock market example, you know, I started investing in 2007 and the financial crisis was in 2008. So I kind of invested all through that period, and coming out of the financial crisis, the news, there was no stock market, you know, stuff on the mainstream type of news at all. If it was about people who lost their fortune in the market crash. So it was like all negative, right? That was a pretty good time to buy. Some good value during that period. Nowadays, on some of the mainstream news, it's like, oh, Joe Schmo made $1 million on crypto, and, you know, what is it? What was the other thing? Yeah, the GameStop thing. Yeah, you know, another, you know, I think the Joe Rogan podcast was talking about the GameStop thing. I don't think that's a good sign for this, you know, the stock market's, I think it's got a, you know, it's not in a bubble or anything like that. There's certainly probably bubbles within the stock market. We won't get into that though, but I don't think it's a positive that some of these all-time high prices for collectibles are on some of more mainstream media sources. Okay, number 2 here. You're seeing some possible market manipulation and maybe criminal activity, certain accusations of that, certainly accusations of that. And, you know, it's not even, you know, you'll have to do like a police investigation kind of to figure it out if it's market manipulation. But it's just the fact that some of these prices are so high that people are like, wow, that doesn't make sense. Like, that's crazy. And they're like questioning, is this market manipulation because the prices are so high? I don't think that's the best sign either for a sort of healthy market. Like normally everything somewhat makes sense. Okay, yeah, like you know, Miles Fever kind of hit pretty hard there, so I could see at that point, you know, maybe that was a significant sale. But yeah, and one of the books that comes to mind about this whole market manipulation thing is that Marvel Previews CGC 9.8 there, the first appearance of Miles Morales in preview. It sold for like 8,000 or 9,000 last year when Miles Morales was really hot. I haven't really looked at any sales in that book lately, but a lot of people in the comic book community were pointing at possible market manipulation. G.I. Joe #1, I covered this on our pricing video that we did where it was, 3 weeks ago, I think. 2 of these sold on the same day. One was for $4,500, another one was for $5,000. And before that, this issue had not gone over $2,000 in the 9.8. So I was thinking maybe that's market manipulation. And since then, though, there's been a couple that had sold for under $2,000 in a G.I. Joe 1. So that's kind of a healthy thing to see. Maybe it was just kind of some idiot overpaying for $5,000 for this one. Okay, I guess so. But just the accusations, because the prices are so high and so strange, makes me think that that's probably not the best sign. You see a lot of, flippers out there too right now, and that's going to happen in a market that's kind of continuing to go up type of thing. And I'm not sure if like a ton of flippers right now is the best sign for collectibles. And it's probably not something I would recommend. Probably not the best thing for the comic book community either. Like when your book spikes up right away, you try to sell it to a sucker or a naive, more naive collector possibly. But, probably not my thing. But I do notice there's quite a lot of flippers and maybe not the best sign. So that was, the second sign. You're seeing those strange prices, the market manipulation, the accusations of maybe some criminal activity. So third sign of a possible collectibles bubble is coronavirus. Yeah, so coronavirus, it came out of left field last year, and nobody could have predicted it, and a lot of people had to stay at home, and they had more time on their hands and got into all these collectibles and their comics that they grew up loving as a kid, similar to what I did like 3 years ago. But so many people got into the hobby last year. The prices have done so well. So like as a thought experiment, I like to think about if coronavirus didn't happen, where would like the 9.8 prices be and high grade collectible prices be? That's an interesting thought, and I feel like they probably wouldn't have done as amazingly as they've done now, like at all. I think things were normal, and coronavirus never happened. So that makes me a little bit nervous because in 2021 here at some point, I think all the high risk people, grandma, everyone, and all our high risk loved ones are going to get the vaccine probably for most of them, and the world is going to move on, I think, and that could be a bad thing for some of these collectibles if the coronavirus, people staying at home was the big crux for all these values to go up. So I think there could be a pullback because of this, and I do think the world will kind of get back to normal once the high-risk people get the vaccine. So that makes me a little bit worried that coronavirus is going to go away, and that was maybe the thing that triggered the price rise. So a last sign here of a possible collectibles bubble, coinciding with some other bubbles in speculation right now, and I think I kind of touched on that where like the news is kind of covering like, oh, this guy made a bunch of money on crypto, and this guy made money on GameStop, and I don't think that's the best sign. Usually a good sign to get in is when nobody's really talking about it, and even in that stock market example, coming out of the recession, if there was any news about stocks, it was about people losing their entire fortune, which made people scared, which made values better, and that's a better time to buy and have that long-term perspective and try to seize the opportunity. But now it's seeming a little frothy, like the market's pretty much from that point. The financial crisis in 2008 has pretty much slowly but steadily gone straight up. So about 14, 15 years, whatever it is. Stock market rally. You got crypto, things like crypto that sort of remind me of how gold was after the financial recession there, where from about 2009 to 2012 or 2013, gold was kind of in a bubble where it was like 1-800, we'll buy your gold, and every pawn shop turned into a gold shop. And I've read about bubbles too. That's one of the signs where there's a lot of like these infomercials sort of excited about get rich quick or 1-800 we'll buy your gold. And I remember during that time reading books about bubbles and saying, yeah, I'm not buying any gold right now. Like there's so many people out there, not like the pawn shops, plus there was just a lot of gold bugs, they're called in the investor community certainly back then, that were saying like gold's going to 10,000 and stuff like that. So that kind of reminds me of crypto now, where you're like, oh, come visit my top secret crypto site. We got a new crypto platform, blah, blah, blah. You can make tons of money like me. Like, it's not a good sign for, I would just say markets in general. And yeah, so it's kind of coinciding with some of these other bubbles. Which one other? Yeah, the GameStop thing is, I wouldn't say that's a bubble because, I think GameStop out of nowhere because of the coronavirus started making money again. Because so then the shorts, there were a ton of, like, Wall Street crushed that one. So when they started making a ton of money again, the shorts got squeezed and it skyrocketed. So in a sense, it almost, makes sense, but probably not the time to buy GameStop right now. But, just with that 14-year consistency of the stock market pretty much going straight up, certainly probably near the end of the opportunity. And yeah, we'll conclude up. And I think that's the takeaway is, I don't think it's like a bubble. I don't think, it's going to burst and then collectible values are going to like just plummet. And, if I think we're due for a correction, certainly there could be a pullback. And then I think we could go sideways for quite a while on some values in 9.8 comics, which would be fine. And certainly there'll be corrections and some books will get hot and some books will get cold, which is always happens in a market. So yeah, if they're getting back, I think I touched on it in the beginning of the video, if there is a collectibles bubble. I don't think there is, but I do think we're at a bit of a peak and sort of near the end of an opportunity where, as probably 4 to 5 years ago was kind of the best time to buy PSA 10 sport cards and CGC 9.8 collectibles and stuff like that. And a takeaway too, at Team CGC 9.8 here, we do focus on the high grade collectibles, and I do think that the high grade ones will weather the storm a little bit better because they're just more rare. And there's always going to be those collectors that have OCD that just want the highest graded possible version of whatever they want. And I think the prices will be a little more buoyant if there ever is a pullback or if prices go sideways for a really long time type of thing. I think the high grade collectibles was a pretty good decision when I, initially got into this, because, buying in the 80s and 90s, which I love to do, the high grade really makes sense for me. And yeah, we made videos on that, so won't get into that. Okay, we'll leave it at that, though. 4 ominous signs of a possible collectibles bubble. I sort of did an older video where I kind of did the positive, signs where it's probably not a bubble because, like, superheroes are ingrained in our culture and we're probably just at a bit of a peak. So yeah, I think if anything, maybe a pullback once the vaccines get out there in some of these collectibles, and maybe we go sideways for a few years or something like that. Like, I'd be fine with that. I mean, collectibles have done so well. Pretty much double, like, all good key issues in the CGC 9.8, that main bread and butter key issues have tripled in value in the last 12 months, pretty much. Yeah, or maybe 13 or 14 months if you want to kind of get even more specific. But all right, we'll leave it at that, though. Yeah, hopefully not a bubble, and maybe there'll be a correction. We'll go sideways a bit, but good to hash it out. All right, thanks, team. We'll leave it at that, and I'll see you on the next one.